Hello, everyone. When was the last time you listened to the sound of your own soul whispering? I mean, truly listened. Not to the noise of the world or the demands of the day, but to that tender voice within, the one that trembles sometimes, the one that rises like morning sun when you remember who you are. You see, we often forget that we are sacred. We forget that we are deserving of kindness. We rush to pour comfort into others, yet leave ourselves standing in the cold. That is not love. That is neglect dressed in the garments of duty. There comes a time when you must pause. You must lean in close to your own spirit and speak to it like someone you love, not like someone you tolerate, not like someone you are trying to fix, but someone you cherish. Speak like you are wrapping your arms around your younger self who still weeps in the silence. Speak like you are healing the wounds that the world pretended not to see. Speak as though your voice carries the balm your heart has been begging for. The words you speak to yourself shape the life you live. That simple truth holds more weight than we often realize. In a world where we're constantly being spoken to by media, by people, by pressure, we forget that the loudest voice, the most constant voice, is our own. It murmurs beneath every decision. It echoes in the quiet moments. It waits for us when we rise, and it follows us when we fall. And if that voice is cruel, if it is sharp and bitter, then it becomes the thread that sews our days with quiet pain. We must become more mindful of that voice because it is the architect of our inner world. When you speak to yourself with love, the world shifts, not because the world becomes easier, but because you become softer where it matters and stronger where it counts. That kind of inner kindness is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's not about looking in the mirror and ignoring your flaws. It's about choosing to see yourself through a lens of compassion instead of criticism. You begin to understand that your mistakes are not monuments to shame, but markers of growth. You stop defining yourself by your failures and begin honoring your efforts. You give yourself credit not only when you succeed, but when you survive, when you show up, when you try again after falling apart. The way you speak to yourself sets the tone for how you carry your pain and how you celebrate your joy. If you call yourself worthless, how can you possibly build a life that feels meaningful? If you constantly say you're not enough, how will you ever recognize when you truly are? Your thoughts repeated often enough become your beliefs. Your beliefs shape your actions. Your actions form the story of your life. So what kind of story are you writing with your words? We don't get to control everything in this life. There are people who will misunderstand us. There are moments that will break us. There are days when nothing goes right, but we do have a choice in how we meet those moments within ourselves. We can choose to berate ourselves, or we can choose to befriend ourselves. And when we choose the latter, everything changes. You begin to approach your days with more calm, more clarity, and more confidence, not because you have all the answers, but because you are no longer your own enemy. Speak to yourself like someone you love. That means being patient when you stumble. That means being gentle when you're hurting. That means reminding yourself of your worth even when no one else is doing it. You wouldn't abandon a friend in their struggle, so don't abandon yourself in yours. You wouldn't mock a loved one for their insecurities, so don't mock your own. Learn to be a steady presence for yourself. Let your voice be the one that soothes you in chaos, that calms your fear, that reminds you it's okay to rest. You are allowed to be a work in progress and still be worthy of love. You are allowed to be healing and still be powerful. And it all starts with how you speak to the person you see in the mirror each day. If your voice has the power to break you, it also has the power to build you. So choose your words with care. Shape your life with love. You're listening even when you don't realize it, and what you say matters. Self-love begins with the tone of your inner dialogue, not the grand gestures or the surface affirmations alone, but the quiet, consistent way you speak to yourself in the most ordinary moments. That tone, whether nurturing or harsh, sets the emotional climate of your life. It becomes the invisible wind that either lifts you or pushes you down. And yet so many of us are walking through life under a constant storm of our own making, speaking words to ourselves that we would never dare say to another human being. You make a small mistake and suddenly you're calling yourself names. You fall short of a goal and you tell yourself you'll never be enough. You look in the mirror and find flaws instead of beauty. It becomes so automatic that you don't even notice it anymore. It hides in your size and the way you hold your shoulders and the way you avoid your own eyes. But that tone, that quiet inner current, it's carving out who you believe you are. And if the tone is cruel, your self-image becomes wrapped in criticism and you begin to live smaller than your spirit was meant to. But imagine if that tone changed. Imagine if it became warmer, gentler, more forgiving. Imagine waking up and instead of immediately thinking of all the things you haven't done, you thanked yourself for making it through another day. Imagine making a mistake and saying, "That's okay, I'll learn from this," instead of, "I'm such a failure." Imagine how your entire sense of worth would shift, not because the world suddenly applauded you, but because you finally decided to honor yourself from within. You don't heal by punishing yourself. You don't grow by beating yourself down. Growth is fed by care. Healing is nourished by understanding. And self-love is born in the voice that comforts instead of condemns. The tone you use with yourself should be one that encourages, not one that destroys. Because at the end of the day, you are your own constant companion. You are the one you spend every moment with. So why not choose to be kind? Some people believe that being hard on themselves is how they stay disciplined. But fear is a poor motivator and shame is an even worse teacher. You do not have to tear yourself down to be accountable. You can be honest and still be compassionate. You can push yourself while still offering grace. Speaking with love does not mean you excuse harmful behavior. It means you approach your growth with gentleness instead of judgment. And that makes all the difference. The world can be unkind. People can be careless with their words. So it is all the more important that you create a sanctuary in your own mind. Let your voice be the one that offers peace when the outside noise becomes too loud. Let it be the steady rhythm that reminds you of your strength, your softness, your humanity. Let it be the light in your dark moments, the one that says, "You're doing the best you can, and that is enough for today." You have spoken to yourself in 1,000 tones. Try the one that sounds like love. Try the one that feels like home. Because when your inner dialogue shifts, everything else follows. Not overnight, not all at once, but with time, with intention, with truth. The tone of your voice becomes the tone of your life. Speak gently, you are listening. You cannot bloom while bullying your own spirit. A flower does not rise under thunder. A tree does not stretch toward the sky when the soil beneath it is cracked by harshness. And yet, so many of us try to grow while feeding ourselves with words that wither us from the inside out. We expect progress while drenching our hearts in self-judgment. We expect confidence while constantly tearing down our own voice. That kind of inner violence, however quiet, becomes the very chain that keeps us small. Every day we speak to ourselves in ways that make blooming impossible. We say we are not good enough, not talented enough, not worthy enough to take up space or dream boldly. We compare our stories with others and declare our own path unworthy before it has even had time to unfold. This constant inner criticism becomes a habit, then a belief, then a way of life. We don't even notice the damage being done because it comes wrapped in the disguise of being realistic or self-aware. But there is nothing realistic about abandoning your own soul, and there is nothing self-awareness about shrinking from your light. Growth demands tenderness. It demands that we create an inner space where mistakes are allowed, where uncertainty is not punished, where vulnerability is not mocked. That is where blooming begins, not in perfection, but in patience, not in harsh judgment, but in loving repetition. You learn, you fail, you try again. And through it all, you must become the steady hand on your own back, not the harsh voice that keeps you afraid to rise. When you bully your spirit, you silence your own wisdom. You lose touch with your own rhythm. You begin to move only when pushed by fear instead of drawn by love. That is not blooming, that is surviving. And while survival is necessary, it is not the same as living fully. You were made for more than enduring. You were made to rise with purpose, to unfold with grace, to feel joy in your own skin. And that begins not with the praise of others, but with the language you speak to yourself in private. Think of the people you love most. You protect them, you encourage them, you stand by them when they are unsure. You don't demand perfection from them to deserve love, so why hold yourself to a different standard? Why deny yourself the same compassion you so easily give away? The truth is, when you begin to treat yourself like someone you love, you stop waiting for permission to bloom, you stop begging the world to see your worth, and start begging that recognition from within. We all carry stories, we all carry pain, but our spirits were not meant to be bruised over and over by our own words. There is enough in the world that tries to dim our light. We must not add to that fire. Instead, we must speak in ways that water our roots, in ways that say, you are still learning, and that is beautiful. In ways that say, you are worthy even now, even still. That is how you bloom, not because life becomes easier, but because you finally become your own shelter. So pause and listen to the way you speak to yourself. Ask if those words are helping you grow or holding you back. And then, if needed, shift your tone. Choose a voice that nourishes. Choose one that believes. Because you cannot bloom in a field of thorns, but you can bloom when you tend gently to the garden of your soul. Be the comfort you crave from others in your own voice. That is not just a sweet idea, it is a necessity. Because sometimes the people you need won't show up the way you hoped. Sometimes love doesn't arrive when you ache for it most. Sometimes silence is all that answers you. And in those hollow spaces, you must learn to be the warmth that wraps around your own aching edges. You must learn to speak to yourself like someone who knows exactly where it hurts and still stays close. We spend so much time waiting for someone to understand us, to validate us, to reassure us that we are enough. And when that reassurance doesn't come, we begin to believe something must be wrong with us. We begin to think we are unworthy because the world has not yet confirmed our value. But healing cannot be built only on outside voices, because external comfort is not always guaranteed. What is always available, though, is the voice within you, the one you can train to be soft, to be steady, to be kind. Think of the moments when your heart has been heavy. Did you reach for your own hand? Did you offer yourself gentleness? Or did you pile more judgment onto the weight you were already carrying? When you cry alone, do you tell yourself to toughen up? Or do you whisper the same words you would offer to a friend in pain? So often we forget that we have the power to be a source of love, not only for others, but for ourselves. The comfort we seek isn't out of reach. It's inside us, waiting to be spoken into existence. Being your own comfort does not mean you never need others. It means you are no longer dependent on their approval to feel whole. It means that when people fall short, and they will, you do not fall apart. You have built something strong inside yourself. You have created a voice that doesn't abandon you when the world gets quiet. And that voice becomes your anchor, your soft place to land, your reminder that you are held even when no arms are there. The words you say in those quiet, vulnerable moments matter. They can build you or break you. When fear rises, speak safety. When sadness lingers, speak presence. When you feel lost, speak direction. It may feel awkward at first. It may feel unnatural, but over time, that practice becomes your power, and slowly, you stop waiting for someone to come save you because you realize you've already begun saving yourself. It is a beautiful thing to be loved by others, but it is transformational to be loved by the person you live with every day, yourself. You know your fears, you know your dreams, you know the stories that made you, the pain that shaped you, the hope that still flickers even when the lights are low. Who better than to offer the comfort you crave? Who better to say, I see you, I believe in you, and I will not leave you? Speak those words, offer them freely, wrap them around your insecurities, lay them gently over your shame. Let your voice become the shelter you've longed for. You are capable of it. More than that, you deserve it. The comfort you give yourself becomes the strength that carries you forward even when no one else does. And that kind of strength cannot be shaken. Gentle self-talk is not weakness, it is survival. In fact, it is one of the strongest, most radical acts you can practice in a world that often teaches us to be hard, unyielding, and endlessly self-critical. We are raised in environments where perfection is praised and vulnerability is mistaken for fragility. So we learn to armor ourselves with silence and shame. We convince ourselves that harshness will make us better, stronger, more successful. But what it often does is leave us hollow, disconnected from the voice inside that only ever wanted kindness. Strength is not in how much you can punish yourself. Real strength is found in the way you continue to show up for yourself with tenderness, especially when it feels like you don't deserve it. It is in choosing to say, I forgive you, when your mind wants to replay your regrets on a loop. It is in whispering, you are still learning. When your fear says you'll never be enough, it is in placing your hand over your heart and saying you are safe here when the world outside feels anything but safe. That's not weakness. That's survival at its most sacred. There's a quiet kind of power in speaking gently to yourself when everything in you is screaming for judgment. That moment of pause, that breath between thought and reaction, is where transformation lives. It's where you decide that your healing matters more than your self-criticism. It's where you choose to rewrite the old script that says you are only valuable when you are flawless. Because you are not meant to be flawless, you are meant to be whole. And wholeness does not come from breaking yourself into pieces to meet impossible standards. So many people walk around wearing invisible wounds, scars from battles fought within, the battles no one sees. The inner dialogues laced with not good enough, too much, never going to change. That kind of voice drains the spirit. It dims the light in your eyes. It steals the softness from your smile, and it is entirely preventable. You can be the one who breaks that cycle. You can be the one who chooses a different tone, a kinder tone, one that says, I'm proud of you for trying, even if you didn't get it right the first time. Gentle self-talk allows growth to happen. It invites you to show up fully without fear of your own judgment. It gives you space to breathe, space to reflect, space to change. Without that softness, self-improvement turns into self-punishment. But with compassion, even your hardest days can become stepping stones. Because when you treat yourself with care, you recover faster, you learn deeper, you rise more willingly, and you stop seeing yourself as the problem and start seeing yourself as the process, fluid, evolving, worthy. This isn't about being passive or letting yourself off the hook when you know you need to do better. It's about refusing to use cruelty as a motivator, because cruelty doesn't teach, it tears. It leaves you too wounded to move forward. Gentleness, on the other hand, gives you the strength to keep walking. It reminds you that every stumble is still movement. Every setback still holds a seed. Every flaw still belongs in yours. Speak to yourself gently, not just when things are going well, but especially when they are not. That is when it matters most. That is when your voice becomes either a refuge or another wound. Choose to be a refuge. Choose to speak in a way that heals. Because in the quiet moments, when the noise fades and the world is still, the only voice that remains is yours. Let it be one that loves you back. Healing starts the moment you choose to be kind to yourself. Not tomorrow, not when everything feels better, not after the pain is past. It begins right in the middle of the ache, when your heart is heavy and your thoughts are tangled, and yet you still decide to offer yourself gentleness instead of blame. That one small choice, choosing kindness over criticism, becomes the first thread in stitching your soul back together. We're taught that healing is something that happens later, something that waits for the perfect conditions, but healing does not wait. It arrives the second you soften your voice toward yourself. It lives in that quiet decision to stop tearing yourself apart over things you could not control. It breathes in the silence where you once filled yourself with judgment. Healing is not a thunderous transformation. It's a whisper, a slow unfolding. It begins not with a solution, but with a shift in how you speak to your own pain. So many people carry wounds made deeper, not by the world, but by their own inner voice. The voice that said, you should have known better. The voice that mocked their fear, questioned their worth, doubted their strength. That voice becomes a shadow that follows them through every experience. And the only way to break that shadow is to meet it with kindness. You cannot hate yourself into healing. You cannot punish your way into peace. You must choose love again and again until it becomes the language you live in. That kindness may look like pausing instead of pushing. It may look like forgiving yourself for what you didn't know back then. It may look like saying, I'm doing the best I can, and actually believing it. And every time you do that, a part of you exhales. A part of you that's been bracing for impact finally releases the tension it's held for years. You begin to realize that your softness is not weakness. It's the very thing carrying you through. It doesn't mean your pain disappears overnight. It doesn't mean you won't fall back into old habits. But now you fall with a little more grace. Now you stand with a little more steadiness, because the voice within you no longer adds harm. It becomes a companion, a guide, a witness to your becoming. And that changes everything. You no longer walk through life looking for rescue. You become the one who holds your own hand through the storm. Choosing to be kind to yourself doesn't erase your past. It reclaims it. It turns every wound into a doorway, every regret into a lesson, every scar into a symbol of survival. You stop hiding from yourself and begin to sit beside your own shadow. You speak gently to the parts of you that are still hurting, still healing, still growing. And in doing so, you create a place within you where love can rest. You've tried being hard on yourself. You've tried silence, shame, and self-criticism. Now try kindness. Just try it. Speak to yourself like someone who deserves to be heard, seen, forgiven, and loved. Because you do. You always have. And the moment you begin to believe that is the moment healing truly begins. So as you leave these words behind and step back into your world, remember this. Your voice is the first home your soul ever knew. Let it be a place of refuge, not ruin. Let it be the light in your darkest hour and the strength in your quietest triumphs. You do not need to wait for the world to love you before you start loving yourself. Speak gently, speak truthfully, and speak often in the language of love to the one person who walks with you through every joy and every sorrow, yourself. Because healing, growth, and peace do not begin with perfection. They begin with compassion. You are not too broken, too late, or too far gone. You are becoming, you are unfolding. And that journey deserves words soaked in grace. Good luck on your path forward. Keep showing up for yourself with love. And from the deepest place in my heart, thank you for listening.